Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. INFO-LANG, Information Languages. So, welcome to our platform. Don't forget, today we have a special broadcast. Teacher or linguist Valentino is going to talk with James Ellis. He's an American. He has been in Haiti. He has been working in Haiti for many years. So today, teacher Valentino is going to talk to him because he speaks Creole very well, that American. So teacher Valentino is going to talk to him. Teacher Valentino is going to ask him many questions about the process that he used to learn Creole. So today, as you can see, I just started the broadcast, but after a few minutes, teacher Valentino will talk to him and receive him, ladies and gentlemen. So don't forget, please. Today the broadcast is going to be a very high broadcast. Please share the live, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm telling you, the broadcast is going to be very exceptional today, very extraordinary. Thank you for joining. Please share the live, and in a few minutes, so Teacher Valentino is going to be there with you to enjoy the live, ladies and gentlemen. Please share the live. Info long, we on the air. Info long is on the air. Please share the live. Share the live, ladies and gentlemen. Share the live. Info long is on the air. So today the broadcast is going to be very hot. Today we're gonna have a nice broadcast. Don't forget, on next Sunday, I am going to receive another, how can I say that? Another another how can I say this? Another person in our life. So please share the live, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome teacher Valentino. Yes. Info long. Information languages. Info long. Information languages. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to receive teacher Valentino and James Ellis. Today, they are going to have a little talk with you because James Ellis is an American. So he has been working in Haiti for many years. So he speaks Creole very well. But can I say very well? But you will see. You will see. And I think that he's going to explain us how was the process to learn the Haitian Creole. But teacher Valentino is going to talk to him. Today, I am just I will be behind the scene. I will be behind the scene to see um, the conversation between Teacher Valentino and Ralph Ellis. Teacher Valentino, how are you?
Pretty good. What about yourself?
But I don't see you, man. I don't see you, brother.
E- Okay, cool.
Okay, now I see you. Okay, now, Teacher
Sure.
Valentino, you get the floor. So, ladies and gentlemen, now, today I'm not the host. The host is Teacher Valentino now. When, after the introduction, I am going to get Mr. Ellis with you so that you can continue the platform. Thank you so much, brother. Enjoy your
Thank you.
broadcast.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. As you know, this is my second time on this platform. INFO-LANG, Information Languages. Today we're gonna have a wonderful talk with Mr. Ellis, who is a language learner, and also he's an American, and we're gonna talk about his experience as a language learner, especially the experience that he's had with the Haitian Creole language in general. So I can see that Mr. Ellis is with me.
Yes, I am. How are
Yes, how are you
you?
doing?
Doing
I'm
good. How are
good.
you? Yeah,
Pretty good. Pretty.
good to hear.
All right. Cool. So we're gonna have let's say from 35 minutes to 45 minutes. This conversation that we're going to have is going to last. So we're not gonna have a lot of time. So we're gonna go straight to a couple of questions that I have for you. But first and foremost, I want you to you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience and what you do. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you again for having me. I'm happy to be here. I love talking about languages and language learning. So again, yeah, my name is James Ulisi. I am currently living in Haiti. I've been in Haiti for the past 6 years, since 2016. And I'm a graphic designer by trade. So I went to school for graphic design in college, but I was born in America, raised a little bit in Haiti when I was younger, but most of my life I've lived in the United States. And so, yeah, now I'm helping run a Christian school here in Haiti, and helping my parents run that school. And so now I'm here talking to you about languages.
Very good. Very good. So guys, don't forget to subscribe to InfoLang Information Languages. This is the platform of Mr. Junior Lucien. I give me the floor today just to talk on his video, and also Seth Paul got on YouTube where you're gonna find this video later on, just right after the streaming. So first and foremost, Mr. James, I have a lot of American friends and students because I teach Haitian Creole to a couple of American people, friends and students as well. And they always, they're always asking me about the Haitian Creole language, how difficult it is just to learn it. So I want you to tell them your, so how do you see the Haitian Creole language itself as an American?
Haitian Creole is interesting. I don't think I can see it just as an American, because actually, the first language I learned was Haitian Creole. I remember when I was, very, very, very small, my parents were speaking Creole to me. And I remember one day my mom, she was holding me, and her shirt, the strap of her shirt, it fell down. And I might have been 3 years old, 2 years old. And I remember I said, Mayo tombe, Mayo tombe. And so Creole was the first language I learned. But yeah, from 3 years old, 4 years old, I was at an American school in Port-au-Prince, and so it was all English. And so since then, I've been speaking English. I see Creole as a very interesting just a very interesting language because there's words from English that are used, obviously French, but then the structure and the grammar are so different from French. And so I think Creole became more interesting when I began to learn French. And when I began to learn French while I was here, I started to understand Creole a lot more. So yeah, Haiti Creole is just it's interesting for a lot of reasons.
Very good, very good. Now, a lot of people, they when they say Haitian Creole, and because if you go to the history of language of the Creole language in general, you can see that there's a CBLF, which is the Creole that are based in French, Creole that are based in English, and other metropolitan languages. So a lot of people consider Haitian Creole to be broken French. What is your take on that?
Um, I would agree. I do think that Haitian Creole is a broken French, but then I think that French is a broken Latin, and I think Latin is a broken version of another language. So I think English is a broken version of some other language, and so sure, every language is a derivative of other languages. Maybe some people don't like the term broken, so maybe you just say that Creole is derived from French. But yes, it's hard to argue that Creole is not largely composed of French words. That is true.
Very good. And what do you do with the prejudice around this term broken? Like we say broken English, generally we know that when you use the term broken English it is generally referred to someone who speaks an English that is not academic. Okay, the person does not respect grammar rules. So for Haitian Creole, we have an academy, we have grammarians, we have linguists. For example, myself, I am currently I'm a prospective linguist and a teacher of foreign languages. Um, what do you do with these prejudices that people have around the term broken? What do you do with it?
So if I understand the question correctly, you're asking why do people choose to call it broken? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not a linguist as you are, but from what I can understand, every language that enters into a new community is going to start to become, it's going to start to evolve. And from my understanding, there's at least two basic parts. There's the vocabulary, and then there's the grammar. And so, in the case of Haitian Creole, the French people brought uh, French to Haiti, and the people did not speak French, but they had to hear it every day, and they had to start to try to interact with the slave masters and things like that. And so they have the vocabulary, but then the grammar is still African in a lot of ways. It's still put on top of this African structure. So you have this mix, and so that happens with any language, any language that goes anywhere. You're going to have the words staying the same, but the structure underneath it is so much different. And so that's why it's hard for Haitian people to understand French, but it's a lot easier for people that speak French to understand Creole. So the prejudice is just because I don't know, people are ignorant to that fact and understanding how languages evolve and how languages change. But everybody has their view.
Very good, very good. So you said there are two parts: the vocabulary, the lexicon, and there's grammar. Like if you can use a more linguistic term, you would say you have the lexicology, and then you have syntax and semantics for the grammar part. So there are two great linguists. One is an American, and the other one is a French. There are Creolists. They're basically people that are working on Creole languages, not only Haitian Creole, but we have Creole from Saint Lucia, Creole from Louisiana in the United States of America, and you have all the Creoles in Brazil and other countries. So there's a theory which you call substratism, which the idea that Haitian Creole is from part of West Africa. We have a lot of authors who back up this idea. We have, for example, this American Creolist. His name is Mark Horder. He wrote a book in 1988, which it's an article based on the development of Haitian Creole and the Creole languages in general. And then we have another guy who's a French. His name is Robert Chandonfon. Right? I don't know how to say that in English, but it's Robert Chandonfon. You would prefer the American pronunciation. And then he's part of a school called Super Classicism, which is the idea that Creole languages are basically an advanced French, right? Um, and the lexicology that we use, the grammar, the vocabulary, they're all from originalism in the French language back in the centuries, or maybe a French that is speaking in France, but in a very rural area. So he takes the example of, for example, linking verbs. In French, we call that copule, which is, for example, you have the verb to be. In Haitian Creole, it would be c'est. In French, it's c'est. And then that c'est, which is the copule, the linking word, the linking verb, what you call copulatif in French or copulative in English, it would say that this is from French in the 17 and 18, 17, 18, 19th century. Okay, so and he said that grammar and vocabulary. This is, I would say, it's just an idea. It's just hypothesis. Not all Creolists believe this idea that Haitian Creole is basically from French. The grammar, the pronunciation, the vocabulary. Only the phonology is different due to the fact that we live in a tropical area and we have different ways to articulate sounds, etc. And he even says that he has this tendency just to categorize Creole languages as advanced French, especially Creole languages that are based on French language. So, do you think that Haitian Creole can be an advanced French? No.
Sorry. I don't think I could say Creole is an advanced French. I don't know if that's the term I would use. The reason I say that is because French is so rich in conjugation of their verbs, for example, and tenses, and Creole is much more limited in that way. So, for example, if you have the verb to run, courir, it's courir no matter what you're talking about, no matter what tense you're talking about. Whereas in French, if it's there's so many ways to conjugate that. So I don't know. I don't. Does that make it less advanced, or does that make French more advanced? I just know that French is much more nuanced than Creole. So I think there are some ideas that it's harder to express in Creole if you want to be very specific, the way you can be in French. Of course, you can communicate, but it's much more precise in French. And so
Yeah.
I'll give you one example. If we say nous in Creole,
Mm-hmm.
am I talking about a group of you or a group of us? Well, we only
Yeah.
have one
Mm-hmm.
word. We only have one word for that. Whereas in French, it's vous or nous.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
there, a lot of times where I'll hear somebody, clarify nous and say who they're talking about. So there's just examples like that.
Yeah, when he said that he's an advanced French, he's not talking about like an advanced, like a state of a language. The Haitian Creole is more developed. You can find more nuance in the Haitian Creole language. He's just saying that all the different variations that you have in Haitian Creole, they existed in French, and then the Creolists uh, adopt a certain form of the past, the past of the French language, whereas the French is a little bit fixed due to the writing system and all of that. It's not exactly that the Haitian Creole is more nuanced. I'll just take an example. We call that the generalization of the infinitive in Haitian Creole for the tenses, whereas we have some other Creole languages, they tend to generalize other things. It's basically the idea that Haitian Creole is French at a certain period of time, and then it evolves due to the environment, whereas French is fixed to a certain, let's say, to the writing system.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't know that I could go too deep into that assessment of French versus Creole as far as advanced. I do think that it's hard to say that languages are not continuing to move forward. French has evolved, yes, from 1800s till today. French has evolved and changed, and English has changed. Creole maybe has changed from that time. So I don't know the word advanced. I might get caught up on that because I have my own preconceived notion of what the word advanced means. But definitely, French is evolving English is evolving, languages are evolving every day. So I don't think comparing Creole and French in that way, I don't know how necessary that is.
Very good. Do you believe that a language that is not actually based on a writing system can be more, can involve more than a language that's based on a writing system?
Can you repeat that question? I didn't understand.
Do you believe that, let's say, for example, Haitian Creole, Haitian Creole still, we are not actually based on, we don't really take the writing system very, very, I'm not going to say seriously, but we're not sticking to it a lot. But for example, French, English, Spanish, and all the languages, the writing system is, people focus on the writing system a lot. Do you believe, or do you think that a language which based on the writing system can develop more than another language that does not put its focus
Great.
on the writing?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think of what do I think about that. I think there are benefits to having the written language, meaning I think it's harder to deviate when you know how words are pronounced. So, for example, in a lot of rural areas or rural communities, they might start to pronounce words a little bit different. I'm not saying that's because people in rural areas don't read, but I think the less you have of that reminder of how words are written and spelled, I think the less education a person might have, the the easier it is to start to pronounce words differently, to start to drop words in your sentences. And so I think literacy is good for standardizing and keeping that standard alive as far as the language goes. And then yeah, so I think that in that sense it's good. But yeah, I think if you don't have that, then the language can go wherever it wants to go at any given time, and there can be a lot of variation in how people speak. So is that a problem? I don't know, but I do think that benefit of standardizing. I think that's a good thing. You're muted.
Uh, said that words are the dress of ideas. Do you think that, like, let's take for example Haitian Creole, English, and French um, language? Do you think that they're, which one is the, I'm not gonna say the best, but can represent ideas to you in a more sophisticated way, in a more expressive way, sophisticated and expressive at the same time? Just give me for the yeah.
I mean, I'm a I'm a little biased. Um, I from what I'm understanding about French, I think that it's more nuanced even than English, and we get a lot of words from French in English. So I think that French is probably more sophisticated in the ability to express ideas even than English. Obviously, for me, I feel like I can express anything I want to in English. But yeah, the more I'm learning about French, I'm starting to see that you can probably get even more nuanced in French than you can in English. And then with Creole, I think that's the least.
What do you think French is to you, as your bias would say, is kind of more nuanced than English? Let's say, for example, English in that case.
Say that again.
More nuanced. There are a lot of, like you can express more things in French, yeah, than the other languages.
Yeah, I'm not saying I can yet because I'm still learning French. But I think yeah, I think a person who's fluent in French, I think they can get more nuance than a person who is fluent in English. That's my assumption.
Very good. So we're gonna take, we haven't started talking about Haitian Creole yet, but we just talking about language in general. I just said that French is kind of more nuanced than even the English. We have the word language, right? In English, you say language. It could be it could mean something like the communication tool that we use, or linguistic code that we use in order to communicate. It can also mean in French langage, which is, according to Noam Chomsky, an inner organ that we have in our head. Okay, or it can also be an inner faculty, according to Ferdinand de Saussure, which is the father of linguistics. that we have in order to learn languages and in order to communicate. It can both mean, in French, you have the word langue, which in English is language, and then you have the word langage, in English is still language. So as you said, there are a lot of nuance that you can express in French with one word, one specific word that you can't explain. You can't really illustrate that with one word in English. You have to explain whether you're talking about the faculty, whether you're talking about the code of communication. It's the same in Spanish. Like in Spanish, you have the word language can be translated in Spanish either in lengua or idioma or lenguaje. If you're talking about the capacity, inner capacity that human beings have. I'm not gonna say I'm a little bit biased because people would say that not only human beings because there are a lot of theories. People from ethnology, they believe that animals themselves have a way to communicate their ideas. Thus, they have a certain language, a certain langage, which is the capacity to communicate. So that's another debate. Okay, very good now. So enough about languages. So we're just gonna get to Haitian Creole. So now, Haitian Creole is we say Creole languages are evolved from something called Pidgin, right? So the Creole language is based on the community. It's two languages put themselves together and give forth the third language. And basically, Creole is called that Creole. So we have a lot of Creole depending on geographical areas, okay, colonization stuff like that happened in the past. So Creole or Creole languages are more evolved than Pidgin because the Pidgin is just a way, it's just a code that people use that is not very sophisticated. We don't have grammar. They mix two languages and they're trying to communicate with each other using a code mix of two languages and modern languages. Now, Haitian Creole is a very specific term. And when I'm talking to some of my American friends and they are telling me that Haitian Creole is very difficult to learn, especially the pronunciation, the intonation. So how do you process the Haitian intonation, the Haitian Creole intonation when you're listening to a native speaker speaking? Okay, how do you do that?
How do I practice it?
Listen it and replicate it, reiterate it.
I mean, you just do it. You just try. I don't have any specific method or any approach to trying to mimic any given language. It's just that you speak it. The only way to do it is to speak it. So I'll give you an example. Um, I feel in English when we go up in Creole, it goes down as far as the voice and the intonation sometimes. And one thing that was very hard for me with Creole was adding the word "we" at the end of a sentence.
Hmm.
So, for example, um, ma bienvenue, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that it was very hard for my brain to be able to do
Uh-huh.
that when I was for the first year or two that I was here
Uh-huh.
because it's so different from
Uh-huh.
English. Um,
Uh-huh.
I don't even know if there's anything like it in English. And so um, something like that, it just comes by having to say it. And then what ends up happening is your brain gets to a point where the sentence does not sound correct unless you use this intonation. And so
Hmm.
that it's like it's hard for me not to say it now.
Hmm.
So it's just about practicing, trying, and listening.
Very good, very good. Yeah, but we say we at the end. Sometimes we use it just to sound a little bit, more polite. Okay, like you put the we, you put the no after, just to sound more polite. If you don't say it, it seems like you're a little bit impolite, when you're talking to the person. And if you're talking to, if the person to whom you're talking is older than you are, and it's almost it's almost mandatory just to use it. I use it sometimes, but especially when I'm talking to elderly people. But if I'm talking to my friends, I don't use it because it sounds a little bit weak sometimes, like using a we at the end.
Right. And so, learning that and even learning that when it's used and when it's not used, that just comes with time. So I think
Yeah.
it, practice is necessary. Speaking is necessary. But yeah, I don't have any tricks on how to pronounce a word the way Haitians pronounce a word. other than to say to just try.
Okay, very good. So now we just move on and phonology. We're just gonna move on grammar. So what do you think of the? Do you think the Haitian Creole grammar is? As you said, we have in English in Haitian Creole we have the generalization of the second person. Okay, for example, in other languages, in other Creole, that simply see we have the generalization of the infinitive. In Haitian Creole, we have the e generally or the e depending on the ending of the verb. Like for example, you have the verb as I said, courir, moi courir, ou courir, li courir, etc. We have the verb to speak, moi parler, ou parler, li parler, etc. We have the generalization of e and e in Haitian Creole. Now we have a lot of other things in Haitian Creole other than these different uh, endings, verb endings. For example, we have te, we have ap, we have pral, we have all these different markers of aspects and tenses and time and Haitian Creole that are kind of different from French, kind of different from English. Now, what do you think? Do you think that the Haitian Creole grammar is like, if we're saying that Haitian Creole grammar just to be able to communicate with Haitian folks, do you think it is difficult to learn, or what do you think of it?
Uh, is it difficult to learn Haitian grammar? Um, I don't like to say that anything is difficult as far as language learning. Uh, I come back to what I said before, is that it just takes time. Um, so with the verbs, I think it's easier to learn verbs in Creole because there's just one version of the verb. You don't have to think too much about that. If it's couli, it's couli. Like I said, if it's parler, it's parler. If it's marcher, it's marcher. So in that sense, learning that aspect is easy. But the grammar, I will say, yeah, it's different. So for example, the definite article, if you're putting machine de besoin, right? You put that definite article at the end of the sentence. Machine de besoin. Whereas in English, you just say the car that I needed. So for an American speaker to be able to take that grammar, that definite article, and take it from the beginning of the sentence and wait until all the way to the end of the sentence to say that, it's very strange when you have to think about that. So that's one aspect. But for the most part, I find that sentences a lot of the times they match how you would say it in English as far as the structure and. But yeah, there are certain things where there's no one-to-one direct translation from Creole to English. It does not exist. And so, like any other language, you just gotta learn it. So I don't want to say it's difficult, but it'll take time.
And one aspect that I get a lot of questions from American people. They're asking about the word app, right? We have app in Haitian Creole. So app m'a manger, m'a parler avec vous. So it can express both a continuing aspect, something that is happening right now. You have in English the present continuous tense or the present progressive tense, just to talk about something that is happening at the time that you're talking. And at that time, it is an aspect. It is a marker of aspect, and you can also use it with non stated verbs, just to express something that will happen in the future. And in English, we call that near future or immediate future. So, how do you like this word app? How do you practice it? Is it? I'm not gonna use the word because like the word difficult. So like sometimes that you use it because I see a lot of American people and I say app you can use it this way and they are abusing the usage of the word app and it doesn't sound spontaneous and you sometimes have to interpret what they are saying.
Yeah. So this is a great question. Okay. So app is even more versatile than what you just mentioned there. It even for the past tense, and you'll give me a second, but it's one of those things. Again, you have to take time to learn the language because yes, in a lot of cases, it's going to mean the present continuous or whatever, and it's like map manger, I am eating. And so for Americans, once we find something that makes sense, and we're like, okay, and we hold on to that, and we say, this is what app means. But I then you say, okay, well then what's the past tense? Okay, mte manger, right? And so, but it's like it's not always that way in Creole. A lot of times, Haitians, native Haitian speakers don't even use te; they just use ap, right? So let's say it was this morning I was talking to my mom. So matin, ma parle avec my mom, and it's like you just use ap, right? And tomorrow, ma parle avec demain, demain si ma parle avec, right? And it's future tense now. And so I think isolating the word app and just not giving the context is going to really mess up a non-native speaker, and they're going to start to understand that word a different way. And then the same thing for an English native speaker. You have to realize that there are a lot of times where you say, "So I'm talking to my mom," and she tells me that's a statement of the past tense. I'm talking to my mom, and she tells me I'm talking to my mom yesterday. So we're using I'm. That's a present, right? I am talking to my mom. But we don't think about it as native speakers. We think that we're always going to indicate the past tense with past tense verb, but that's not the case. In a lot of languages, to refer to the past tense, you use the present, and it's all about context. And did you add the word yesterday? Did you add the word this morning, or this, some indicator of time? So in Creole, it's the same thing. Um, and except for the future tense, I think I don't know if we do that with the future tense in English. Do we say I'm talking to you tomorrow? Oh yeah, we do that in English too. We say I'm
Yes,
speaking
yes.
to I'm speaking to Ralph Valentino tomorrow. We'll add the context. We'll say I'm speaking to him tomorrow. So it happens in all languages, but you just have to be aware of what's happening in your own language too, so that you can understand what's happening in other languages as well.
Exactly. Even in English, they use the simple present tense just to indicate something that's happening in the future. Like school starts next September, next September. So we have the present tense here, and it's to indicate something that will happen in the future. So what you said is, I would say it's correct. So we have to pay attention to the pragmatism of the language, the context of the language. It's not only just trying to put everything all the theories together and trying to sound like native speakers. Sometimes you're just going to miss the context. You have to pay attention to the context a lot, and the language is very flexible, and you can use one tense to indicate another time because you have time frames, three time frames, and then you can use different tenses to indicate the time frame in the past, in the present, and in the future. So yeah, that's very interesting. I think that some of my American friends would trying to base on the pragmatism of the word app, to not worry about it a lot, but trying to understand it in the context of it and trying to use it in the context. Pay attention to the context when you're listening to a native speaker and trying to use it that way. But do not hold on one or two ways of using the word app, which is linguistically tricky.
Absolutely. Oh, you're muted.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you were muted. I thought you were speaking.
Uh, okay, yes, yeah. The next we talk about sub subtratism, superstitism, which is these are very complicated linguistic terms, and now we're gonna talk about the Haitian Creole language in a more, not just the grammar, but in a more just how you communicate with people. Like, how do you communicate with Haitian folks in general?
How do I communicate
Like,
with them? I
yeah,
speak in Creole.
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I,
How do you communicate? Like, where do you find and where's your community as you live in
yeah,
Haiti?
sure. So my parents have a hotel here, and so there's a lot of people that work for them. So when I first got here, I was spending a lot of time talking to some of the young people that worked here, also at church. But now that I help my parents run the school, I'm running the school. So I guess you can say for right now, I'm the director of the school. So I work with teachers and the administrative director. I'm communicating with all different levels of Haitian Creole speakers every day.
Mhm. Yeah, very good, very good. Now, yeah, we have someone, Mr. Rhymes Flowers. He said the chat business is Creole. better than many Creole native speakers. He really knows what he's saying. Yeah, very good. So we have, yeah, yeah, yeah. I really enjoyed talking to you, man. And this is my first conversation, and I really wanted just to have talk to you because I have a lot of friends, American friends, that tell me Haitian Creole is very difficult, and I just want to take you as an example because I know that Haitian Creole. You really interested in the language processing, and everything about the language itself, all the linguistic, I would say, aspects of the language itself, and that's very interesting to see and to know, and very passionate whenever I'm talking to you. And we have other, I know that we have other passions. We have to say that to the public that it's not only language learning, it's not only Haitian Creole and English. We have other, subjects, topics that we're going to tackle maybe in the future. I know that you're very into spirituality, science, and philosophy. I'm deeply interested in as well. Maybe more interested than language learning in general, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I can say that we're gonna have another streaming maybe let's say in 1 month. We're not gonna that's that. I have only two people that I'm going to pick after, but I'm very pleased just to have you here in the broadcast. Now we're just waiting for people that are here in the broadcast. If you have any questions, you can just type it in. If you're American folks, you can just type it in. Maybe I will find the questions on YouTube because I'm going to postpone that in my YouTube channel after, and folks are going to ask questions on the YouTube channel. And then if there are certain questions that they're going to ask, and I'm not American myself, I'm Haitian, that I can answer. I don't know English. I can't say I'm not American, but it's very difficult for me to consider English as a third language. I would say English is my second language in a sense because English and French are the same. I'm actually at the same level, although that I have a more my pragmatism in French is even more developed because I've used French for many years. But I know that there I will have a lot of questions based on your brain because the way you understand Haitian Creole is not exactly the way that I understand it. Myself to understand Haitian Creole, I have to go to school to learn it, just to understand because we take a lot of things for granted. But when you're learning the language, you're very you're very insightful about all different variations, different details in the language. So whenever they ask me a question, and I can't really process the question as an American, so I think that based on this live itself, I would have to send that to you, and then you will have to give me the answer as an American who speaks Haitian Creole, how you understand that and your method, okay? The thing that you use in order to use the language, to understand the language, how you use the intonation, different intonation. We're going to talk about the rising and falling intonation in Haitian Creole, which is very different from English, it's very different from French, which is very tricky in Haitian Creole because if you do not use it properly, maybe you sound very different from the way that your initial intention was, which is very different from other languages. Although in English you can use the pitch, the rhythm can the different rhythms of the speech can refer to something else. So I'm very happy just to have you here. So we have only let's say 5 minutes because I said that we're gonna have 45 minutes, but it's already 49. So now we can talk. Just tell me a couple of Haitian. English is killing it. Very good. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you so much. Now we're gonna talk about. We're not gonna be talking, but you're gonna tell me a couple of English proverbs or sayings, and then that you find very interesting, and then how you translate, how difficult they are just to be translated in English, and then you can just give me the translation for them.
Oh, okay. So I think one Haitian Creole proverb that I like is wash. Hopefully I'll say it correctly. Washna rivière, pas comme nous les washna soleil. So in English that would roughly translate to a rock in the river water, doesn't know the pain of a rock in the sun. And I just
Do you
I
use
just
that in English? Well, that's a literal translation.
oh, I'm sorry, say it again.
Is that a literal translation English, or do you say that in English?
That's just a literal translation. We don't say that. We don't say that in. And so the reason it sticks out to me is because a lot of times, I don't know if they do this in the South or in Port-au-Prince, but up here in the North, if somebody's having a problem and somebody else wants to make a joke about their problem, they'll say, "I'm gonna back on right?" And so I would always hear people say that. And then when I learned that proverb, I felt like maybe that's where that comes from. Bakunduleo. So yeah, so that's one interesting proverb.
And how would you translate that in English?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, you know, I don't think there's a English proverb that matches that. But yeah, the translation is, a rock in the water doesn't know the pain of a rock in the sun. You know.
Like, do you use that? Do you like when you're talking to an American who does not speak English, Haitian Creole at all? Do you use that expression? Do they understand if you're talking to American friends?
I've
Like with
never,
okay, okay.
yeah, I never used that.
Okay, very good, very good. That's the first one. What's na soleil, pa kon dule what's na rivière, pa kon dule, what's na soleil. So what would be the second one? It could be a saying, a proverb, or anything.
Yeah, the second one is mande cheme, pas di pedi pour ça. Mande cheme, pas di pedi pour ça. So it's like,
Mhm.
man, translating that into English, asking for directions doesn't mean you're lost,
Exactly.
right?
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I just really enjoy that way of thinking because I think there's a lot of times when we're afraid to ask for help because we feel like that's going to show weakness, and that proverb is directly saying that doesn't mean weakness just because you're asking for help. So Monday sheme pas di peti pour ça. And the reason it's interesting to me is because the words that are used in Haitian proverbs are so reductive, so reduced, and I had never heard anybody say "padi," and I didn't understand "padi" until it was in the context of that sentence. That it means "pable,"
Hmm.
and so that was good for me. So I like that one.
Very good, very good, very good. So these are the two proverbs of saying in English, in Haitian Creole. What's not blue, pa kon dule what's na soleil, and then Madesine Pablo Pedi Pusa. Pablo Pedi. Okay, very good. So that's very interesting. I hope that my American friends are taking notes and these these Haitian Creole sayings, they're very idiosyncratic. Okay, if you're using them, it sounds like you're part of the Haitian community. Like you're using a way of it's like it's a very opening way of thinking. Okay, and once you use it, it sounds like Haitian. Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting. So, Mr. Ulysse, how do you pronounce your name? Ulysse or Illis?
I pronounce it Ulysses. I say my name is James Ulysses, but
Ulysses.
but other people in my family they'll say Ulysse or Ulysse. So there's multiple ways
Uh-huh.
to pronounce it.
Just can you lay them out?
Sure, you can say Ulysse, Ulysses,
Mhm.
Ulysses, Ulysse.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
In French, it's
And
Ulysse.
Ulysse in French, yeah, in French it's Ulysse. You like the French, like you say Ulysse, Ulysses. You prefer that one,
Yeah, Ulysses.
Ulysses. Okay, yeah. I never thought about that. I would just put it would be Ulysse, Ulysse in French, yeah.
Yeah,
Ulysses. It's like the stretch is at the, yeah,
I think most people would pronounce it Ulysse. So that's fine.
yeah.
The way you're pronouncing it, that's fine.
Very good. So, Ulysses, very good. I'm very happy to have you here. You know, this is Self Polyglot um, INFO-LANG, which is information languages, run by Mr. Junior Lucien. He is Haitian. He lives in Turkey. Right now, he's in Turkey. In Turkey, I think it is around 10 o'clock in the evening. So it's very very late in Turkey. So he gives me this opportunity and this platform because it's a very professional platform. You can talk to someone live streaming, just have this conversation with you. I hope that in the future we're going to have our next conversation on other topics, and basically have some other aspects of Haitian Creole that I would like to tackle with you as well. Along with my studies and my research as well, I can just talk to you about these things. And I don't live in the north, but I know that there is a different, variations of Haitian Creole in the north. Like listening to people from Cap Haitian and for Liberty and all these areas, you tend to see that they have different ways of using Haitian Creole, which is I would say regionalism. So yeah, sometimes I can talk to you about these things, and maybe you can just live stream these things and talk about them because I'm really interested in debating and asking people about their people for their ideas on Haitian Creole and other things. So we have about 4 minutes. But people are just asking about English. Now we have Haitian folks that are asking about English. What are the best ways for my students to improve their English? Can you just give them, yeah, your thing on English? So I have one person who's talking about English right now. Yeah, he's a Haitian, a
Man,
teacher.
yeah, how to improve their English? That's a big question. I teach English. I help my students learn English as well at the school where I am, and I think that the first thing, uh, my personal opinion, is to learn a language the way a baby learns a language. And so I think that listening a lot at the beginning, like a baby might be listening for a year or two before it starts speaking, or a few, at least a few months. It's just listening. And so just to get an understanding of how the voice is going up and down and how it's working, and then start speaking. Um, I don't suggest or recommend going right into writing or right into reading. That's my personal opinion. I recommend going into speaking, trying to make those sentences. And I think that little children are good to speak to. I think a lot of people recommend that when you're learning languages. Little children have a way of simplifying the language, but it's correct. And so, speaking with little children, if you can, if you have friends who have young children, anything from 3 years old up to 7 year, 8 years old, you're going to get less complicated English. So those are my tips: is to listen a lot first, and then get into speaking. If you can, speak to young children, and even on that same topic, watching children's shows, children's cartoons, anything where you have good, clear dialogue. Um, that's gonna be better than, I think, than watching adult movies for adults. Um,
Oh, yeah.
those are my tips.
Very good, very good. So I guess that Mr. Lucien is listening and he's taking notes on that. And there's another question. I think it's the last question. It has to do with accent. So yeah, the person said, "What can I do to have a good accent?" Like first and foremost, do you think there's a good accent? I know what the person is trying to say, but do, do you think that
Yeah,
there's a good
I do.
like in English?
Um, I think I do. I think I do feel like there is a natural native accent, even if there are multiple different accents. So, for example, in America, we have a New York accent, or maybe a Californian accent, or Chicago, or whatever. But it's still natural, and so I do think it's good. I think it's good to speak as closer to what a native speaks, because it makes it easier for people in the country to
Mhm,
understand you. But
mhm,
that doesn't mean that other accents are bad. It just means that
mhm,
it'll be easier for people to understand you. So how do you improve your accent? How can you get a good accent? Um, I think one thing is to focus on what kind of English accent you want. If you want
mhm,
English from England, from Britain, then listen to British people speak. If you want an American English, listen to American English. If you want Australian English, that's different. Then go watch Australian TV or Australian shows and listen to Australian people and speak to them. So that's number one, is to decide. And I think a lot of people want an American accent. So you
mhm,
have to to Americans, speaking to them, people who have a native American accent. So I don't recommend for beginner speakers to speak to other beginner speakers, because they're going to pronounce things a different way than Native Americans speak, and they're going to have different grammar. They're going to make mistakes, and you're not going to know if they're making a mistake. So trying to speak to a native speaker as often as you can is going to help correct you as much as possible. The same way a baby is always getting Creole from their mother who speaks perfect Creole, and their father who speaks perfect Creole, and their friends who speak perfect Creole. The same thing for an American baby. They're hearing English from people who speak perfect English. So I think beginners should be receiving the language from people who speak the language perfectly. That's just my personal opinion. So
On that. Very good. So, Mr. Ulysses. So, yeah, I have to just get used to that way because in my mind, your name in my mind, well, it was always James Ulyss. So when you tell me that today, I say, yeah, I just, okay, yeah, I just thought it was completely different. So
quickly, if I can, let me tell you why I say that that's how it's pronounced. Again, the way you're saying it, that's the way I think most of my family probably pronounces our last name. But what happened for me was when I was in kindergarten or first grade at the American school in Port-au-Prince, my teacher said my name. She said, James Ulysses. And so ever since then, in my brain, name is pronounced Ulysses. So it's an American that was pronouncing my name, and I accepted that because we have a president was Ulysses S. Grant, and so when they see Ulysses, they just think it's pronounced the same way, Ulysses, and so that's how they pronounced it. But I think a lot of my family pronounces it exactly the way you pronounce it. So you're not saying it wrong. There's multiple ways.
Okay, very good, very good. So thank you so much. So one guy, so you gotta said that you have a New York accent. NC accent is really different from New York accent. Okay. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for you have a New York accent. You said that you have a New York accent. So yeah, you don't?
I do not. I do not. A New York person, if you're talking from New York, they talk like this. You know what I'm saying? And they talk a little bit different, and they do this and that. I don't. That's not how I talk. I think I have a pretty neutral accent. I probably, and a lot of people in Florida, we have a very neutral accent. You wouldn't really know where I was from. But if this is an American saying that, then okay, I'll accept that. I'll accept that I have a New York accent. But I really, really don't think I have a New York accent.
All right, man. All right, Mr. Ulysses. It was a pleasure for me to talk to you, and I hope to talk to you soon. Okay, on Chapter Polyglot and Information Languages. So, guys, this is Ulysses. He's an American based in Haiti. He speaks Haitian Creole, almost like I do. And then, if you have any questions, you can ask your questions in the comment section, especially in the YouTube channel. And then I'm going to answer all the questions. If I can't answer, as I'm not an American, so I'm going to send the questions to Mr. Ulysses, and then he's going to answer your questions. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ulysses, for your time, your patience, and your uh, um, expertise when it comes to language learning, especially Haitian Creole. And I'm very happy to talk to you, and I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you so much, man.
Merci un pile, c'était un plaisir. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Merci un pile, merci un pile. Prochaine fois, on n'a pas les créoles.